much. You may be seated. Before we dive into today, I was going to say we have now reached a new stage in life with Luke. Luke is now in the stage where he takes things and he hides them. So we're now in the where did Luke leave things phase of life. So it's been fun. I did find the tablet that he ended up taking and hid. So fun and exciting. All's good. I love it. It's a work in progress. Who is God and what is God like? Now this is going to be our starting question for our next sermon series that we're going to be looking into. And these are foundational questions for the Christian faith. Every one of us at some point have kind of wrestled with this. We've thought about who is God and what is God really like. Now what I have found is what you believe about God, it determines the way you live your life. Right? If I believe one thing about God, I'm going to live my life this way. If I believe something else about God, that can direct and change the way in which you live your life. A.W. Tozer, one of my favorite writers, he wrote this: what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. I love that. What comes to our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. And it's so true. So let me ask those questions again. Who is God and what is God like? That's what we're going to be wrestling with. And I'm going to tell you the answer, part of the answer, most of the answer can be found right here in Scripture. There are other clues that God has given us, that He has revealed to us, but a lot of it is found right there in the pages of the Bible. Failure to understand God for who He really is, it can lead us down some really bad paths. It can take us to a place where we actually cause, that we create in our head this false God. That we can chase after a false God, or we can even end up worshiping this God that we have created in our head. If the God that we have in our head doesn't match who God has revealed Himself to be, that is a false God. That is not a real God. That is something that we have created. It is an idol. Now there's a lot that rides on the answer to these questions of who is God and what is God like. There is a lot that kind of comes to this. So my next logical question for you is, where do we find the answers? Where do we actually get the answers to those questions of who is God and what is God like? I will tell you, one of those answers is right here. But the key truth, and I got to say this before I kind of reveal those answers to us, a key truth for us to understand is the only things that God has revealed about us, or revealed about Himself, the things that He has revealed in His Word, those things that we can know, that is the only source of the things that we can hold on to. He has chosen to reveal certain things to us, but not everything. There are certain things that God has said, hey, this is me. You can know it because I have revealed it to you. Here's the reality about God. If God didn't reveal anything to us, it doesn't change His nature. It doesn't change who He was. He was still going to be that even if He never revealed it to us. He chose to reveal it to us. We got a glimpse of it, but just a glimpse. So who is God like? Or what is God like and who is God? For the rest of this year we're going to be looking at this. We're going to look at this sermon series. Who is God? That's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at the attributes of God, God's character. Each Sunday, we're going to take one of these, and we're going to try to just give a little bit of a scratching of the surface to kind of whet your appetite as to what this one attribute is. That we could spend an eternity looking at each individual attribute of God. We will not forsake of time, but I do challenge you, take this as a springboard. Go from this. Dig deep into who the God of the Bible is. Because this is foundational to who He is and what we believe about Him. Who is God? And today we're going to look specifically at the idea of who is God and what is God like. We could have said, the story behind a name or something like that could have been our title, because we're going to kind of look at some of the names. In just a little bit, we're going to look at the names of God and what that reveals about Him through Scripture. But all of this is just a scratching of the surface. But before we do it all, let me pray. God, I ask you to slow my mind down. Right now it is speeding. Lord, there's a lot of stuff that this information has, Lord. And I pray that you organize my thoughts, Lord, that you make it clear, Lord, that it is absolutely founded upon your word. Lord, and I pray that the message, that it doesn't get lost in the sermon, Lord, that we can come to see you for who you are, Lord, as you have revealed yourself to be. Help us to see it today, Lord. Let us not miss it, because this is so important. And we thank you, Lord, and we are eternally grateful that you have chosen to reveal yourself to us. And for it all, we will give you the praise and praise in your name. Amen. I want to say before we dig too deep into this, we are never going to fully comprehend God. Not here on earth and not in heaven. Okay? I kind of thought as I was a kid, when I get to heaven, I'm going to have more knowledge about God and maybe be able to start to understand Him. I don't want to bust any bubbles, but when you get to heaven, you are still going to have a very limited understanding of who God is. It will probably be a little bit clearer image of who God really is than maybe we are able to comprehend today, but we are never going to be able to fully comprehend who God is. God, He has revealed Himself in three ways. Well, the only things that we can know about God is what God has chosen to reveal to us about Himself. That was the previous thing that I had said. But that's important. The only things that we can know about God is what He has chosen to reveal to us. Anything extenuating beyond that, it is just supposition. It is not something that we can concrete say, I know this about God. He has not revealed it. It may be true, it may not be true, but I would lean on the side of saying, let's go with the concrete. Let's go with the things that we know, because there's more than enough to focus on. God, He has revealed Himself in three specific ways to us. The first way that He has kind of in general revealed Himself to us is through creation. We can see glimpses of God through creation and various things that He has kind of done through creation. We can see God through the Bible, through His Word, what He has revealed to us through the pages, through His names, through His attributes, through the stories and the personal accounts and events that we see in the Bible. And thirdly, we can see it through the person and work of Jesus Christ. God came to this earth and took on flesh in the form of Jesus Christ. He was here. He lived a life and He died on the cross. And the whole purpose of that was to display love for us, to provide us a rescue plan, a way back into a right relationship with Him. But along the process, we can see some glimpses of who God is through the person and work of Jesus Christ here as He physically was, as a historical individual. Again, this is just a way to whet your appetite. This study, it's not going to go far enough. It's just, hey, die from you. Go from you. You got another quote. I think in order to be a study person of the attributes of God, you need to have the initials A.W., because you have A.W. Tozer and this guy A.W. Pink, and he wrote specifically on the attributes of God, and this is another one of these great quotes. An unknown God can neither be trusted, served, nor worshipped. It would be really hard for us, if we knew nothing about God, to put that type of trust, that type of faith. He would still be, he would still deserve it, but if He never revealed Himself, it would be really an impossibility for us to ever take that step of faith. We could not do it, and we would not make that step on our own. So God draws us. God is the one who comes and does this process in us. God never had to reveal himself to us, but he chose to reveal himself. He chose to say, hey, here's some snapshots of who I am. Here's a glimpse of my character so that you can know that I truly am a personal God that loves you, who didn't just create things and then step away, but is intimately involved in the things. Again, we're never going to fully grasp God here on earth or in heaven. But that leads us to the idea that we have a God who is a one-of-a-kind, unique, without comparison God. There is no one like our God. It is absolutely incredible to see when you start to take some glimpses of his character. Some of it is so distant from us. For us to really create a God in this type of mentality that would come and rescue us, and we are the vile villains of the story, that's not something that humans would come up with. It's not something that humans would create. It is something that God, in his infinite sovereignty, orchestrated. It is a factual, historical thing where he would send his son, willing to die on the cross for us. It's incredible. Nothing else. When you think about God, nothing else is without beginning or end. Nothing else is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Nothing else is all-powerful, all-present, and all-knowing. Nothing else is the creator and sustainer of all things. Nothing else is worthy to be glorified. So as you process this stuff, are you starting to understand God is unique? God is not like us. We cannot take God and whittle him down to our level. But sadly, sometimes we try to do that. To kind of understand God, we put him in human terms. We put him in human context. And it just is impossible to fully comprehend the incomprehensibility of who God is. Again, as I said, he reveals himself in general through creation. We can get a sense of God's awesomeness through what we see in creation. When you stop and think about some of these things, when you think about creation, it is so complex. People spend their entire lives trying to study outer space and the vastness of it and the complexity. And you look at the human bodies and they still don't understand even the certain even connections inside the brain. They don't fully grasp some of this stuff. Creation is complex. It is vast. It is beautiful. I mean, you take a telescope. My wife just got one recently, and you look up into the heavens, and it's like, wow! As the Bible says, the heavens declare his glory. And you see it right before you. It's beautiful. You think about the order and the structure to things. It isn't just happenstance. It didn't just by fluke with time and chance come together. No, there was a creator. There is order. There is structure. And you can see that. I mean, you just take outer space for a second. If Earth is just off by a few feet, we don't survive. We are burnt to a crisp. Either one way or the other. We're frozen the other way, I think. But it's crazy. You think about that. God is a God of order, of structure, of beauty, of vastness, of complexity. All of that, it speaks to the Creator. All that creation does, it communicates who God is. And it reveals some stuff about him. Now, before I launch into this weekly study of taking an attribute and trying to dig a little bit deep into that, and kind of give us a scratching of the surface with it, I'd like for us to spend today looking at the names of God. What do the names, certain names in the Bible, what do they reveal to us about God? That's what we want to look at today. Let's start at the very beginning. If you got your Bibles, turn to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis 1:1. Right on over there. Genesis 1:1. It says there, in the beginning, God. I'm going to pause, take a little time out right there. In the beginning, God. Do you realize that there is a supposition, a presupposition on this that God existed? There is no explanation for God in any of this. It is in the beginning, God. You could put a period there. In the beginning, God. He existed. That is something that this book, the Bible, it takes for granted. It is just saying, there is a creator. There is a God. He is here. You can see it through things, but there is a God. In the beginning, God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God is the cause of everything. He is without origin himself, but it is through him that everything else has gotten its origin. He is the creator of all things. God. That word, in the beginning, God. That word, it is Elohim. Okay? Elohim. It's a Hebrew word, and what it means is strong one, divine one. Interesting thing about the Hebrew word Elohim. A lot of times, it is something that they have taken, and the root that they'll go with is El. And they take this and then they pair it up with other Hebrew words that describe God. And we're going to see some of this today as we're going to see El, which is the strong one, the divine one, paired up with various other Hebrew words that describe who God is. It's names for God that we see through the Bible. So if ever you're looking through your Hebrew and you're like, oh, I see El, it's probably somehow connected in with God or a reference to God in some way. So, Elohim is the second most frequent name of God given in the entire Old Testament. It is used over 2,500 times. And a lot of times we just see it translated simply as God. G-O-D. Capitalized, we see it as Elohim, but that's the word. God. Many of the names that we see throughout the Bible, they kind of reveal individuals' characteristics, their personalities. The names kind of indicate who they were and kind of what they were. And in the same way, we see that with God. His names kind of reveal who he is and what he is like. We kind of see this. But thinking about Elohim, taking that, you flash forward to the New Testament, and you have this phrase that Jesus utters while he's on the cross. And the phrase is, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. Okay? What it means is, my God, why have you forsaken me? That word Eloi, it actually comes from Elohim. It is Jesus, and he is addressing his Father. He is addressing him as the strong one. He is addressing him as the divine one. My God, why have you forsaken me? Now, we know the answer to what he's asking. The reason that God, he turned his back on him was because at that point, all of the sin of humanity was on Jesus on the cross. He was there for a purpose. He was paying the penalty of sin. But that kind of goes through all of this. It is through this forgiveness that Jesus has offered where we can access forgiveness of sin through this act on the cross. But the name, Eloi, it is a very telling name. Jesus, he was recognizing God the Father. And that God the Father, he is able to do anything. And that Jesus, he is crying out to this God. He is crying out to the strong one. He is crying out to the divine one. You see that in this. So Elohim, another name for God, kind of taken along with Elohim, a form of it. If you got your Bibles, flip it open about halfway, and you'll land close to Psalm 97. Psalm 97, we're going to look at verses 1 through 9. In Psalm 97, 1 through 9, we're going to see another name for God pop up. The Lord reigns. Let the earth rejoice. Let the many islands be glad. Clouds and thick darkness surround him. Righteousness and justice are the foundation of his throne. Fire goes before him and burns up his adversaries round about. The lightnings lit up the world. The earth saw and trembled. The mountains melted like wax at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the Lord of the whole earth. The heavens declared the righteousness, and all the peoples have seen his glory. Let all those be ashamed who serve graven images, who boast themselves of idols. Worship him, all you gods. Zion heard this and was glad, and the daughters of Judah have rejoiced because of your judgments, O Lord. For you are the Lord Most High. Over all the earth, you are exalted far above all gods. Now, that phrase, the two words, Most High, that is another name for God that you see. And you'll see this pop up throughout the Old Testament. But this word is El Elyon. And what it means is the strongest one. The Most High, as we have it interpreted in our English, or supreme in power and in position. I want you to think of it like this. I don't know if when you grew up this was kind of a thing, but when I grew up, there was this kind of elementary, like really young argument that my daddy's stronger than your daddy. And I would get in on this, and I thought I had an advantage at the beginning, because like my dad was a cop, and there was like got to be some clout connected to the fact that my dad's a cop. So I'd go on in, and I'd be like, well, my dad's stronger because he's a police officer. And then I found out pretty quickly that my dad was much older than all my peers' dads, so probably wasn't true. But here's the thing. We have a daddy who is stronger than all other daddies. And we can take that to the bank. That our God, he isn't just like something that we have created. Again, he is unique. He is the strongest one. He is the Most High. He is unlike everything else. In power and position, he is supreme. It's pretty incredible. There is no one like our God. He is supreme in power and position. The next name, you'll see it in Genesis 16, 1 through 16. Now this passage, it's going to talk about this kind of weird love triangle of sorts with Abram and Sarah and Hagar. And you're going to see some stuff. It's maybe a familiar passage, maybe not. But this passage, ultimately, we're going to see a name of God pop up in it. And it's a pretty remarkable name of God. But let me read this passage. Genesis 16, 1 through 16. Now Sarah, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. Okay? Remember, context to this. Abram and Sarah had been promised by God that they would be parents. And they were pretty old in age when God promised this. And God had yet to fulfill that promise. And so he had still not fulfilled it. And she had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. So Sarah said to Abram, now behold, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Wrong. Please go into your maid, into my maid. Perhaps I will obtain children through her. Now, before you get this "you" factor, which you might just naturally get through this was a common practice in the Old Testament times where a handmaid or one of the wife's maids could be married to the husband and therefore kind of be an extension of the family. It was just a cultural thing that they did. After Abram had lived 10 years in the land, and Abram listened to the voice of Sarah. After Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Abram's wife, Sarah, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her maid, and gave her to her husband, Abram, as his wife. He went in to Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her sight. And Sarah said to Abram, may the wrong done me be upon you. I gave my maid into your arms, but when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her sight. May the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarah, behold, Your maid is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight. I want to stop there for just a second. I think Abram was in the wrong there. I think Abram kind of backed out. He kind of just passed the buck of responsibility and said, hey, you know what? This is an issue. You take care of it. And the reality is, I don't know. I can't say for certain, but if Abram was really the head of the household, and he really had this problem brought to him, and he took it before the Lord in prayer, and he gave maybe an answer that was maybe more Christ-like in this, instead of, oh, she's yours, do with it whatever you want, maybe the turmoil that we don't have in the Middle East. I don't know. I don't pretend to even subject to that. But the reality is, from this, we start to have this huge conflict in the Middle East. And it goes on. So Sarah treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. Now the angel of the Lord found her by a spring, speaking of Hagar, of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. He said, Hagar, Sarah's maid, where have you come from, and where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of my mistress Sarah. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress, and submit yourself to her authority. That's humbling. Moreover, the angel of the Lord said to her, I will greatly multiply your descendants, so that they will be too many to count. The angel of the Lord said to her further, behold, you are with child, and you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has given heed to your affliction. He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. And he will live to the east of all his brothers. Then she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are a God who sees. For she said, have I even remained alive here after seeing him? Therefore, the well was called Ber-Lahai-Roi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to him. So you got this crazy thing happening, and Abram and Sarah, they can't conceive, so insert Hagar, and Hagar ends up conceiving. There's strife between Sarah and Hagar, and then what ends up happening is Hagar flees and has an encounter with God. And God, in the whole process of this, she ends up calling him a God who sees. You are a God who sees, and that is our third Hebrew word. It is El Roi. And it means, surprisingly, the strong one who sees. Now, it indicates that God, he sees all things. That there is absolutely nothing hidden from God's sight. He has all things in his perception. Now, that's a mixed bag when you stop and think about that. At one hand, it's pretty comforting to know that God sees everything. That we are never going to be alone because God is there. That God is present. That God witnesses all things. But it's also kind of this scary side of the bag, too, because we realize that all those things done behind closed doors that we don't want other people to see, all those things that we even think in the intents of our heart, God sees the thoughts and the intents. God knows those things. And it's scary sometimes. But everything God sees. There's nothing hidden from God's sight. Leads us to the next name. In Isaiah 40, 27 through 31. It says in Isaiah 40, 27 through 31, why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and the justice due me escapes the notice of my God? Do you not know? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, does not become weary or tired. His understanding is inscrutable. He gives strength to the weary. And to him who lacks might, he increases power. Though youths grow weary and tired, and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. You know, between some of these passages that we've read today, you might start to think, and maybe you're as guilty as I have been, that life's not fair. That sometimes we get the raw end of things, at least in our perception, that things don't go according to the way we want them to. That we've been treated somehow unfairly. God says here, do you not know? Have you not heard? And then he says, the everlasting God. It's another name for God. It's number 4 on our list. El Olam. And it means, El Olam, it's a Hebrew word which means forever, always, no beginning and an unending future. Simply put, everlasting. When you think about that in this context, all of us get tired. All of us get weary. At some point, we got to eventually crash and take a nap. We got to go to sleep. All of us do. We get tired. But that is not the case with God. At no point does God ever have to rest. That's mind-boggling. He is everlasting when it comes to power. He is absolutely without beginning or without end in the context of power. He is the source of power. And that source, it is never depleting. It is a never depleting source. Again, Isaiah, you get this Isaiah in the last part of it. It talks about how he increases power, and then though youths grow weary and tired and vigorous young men stumble badly, yet those who wait for the Lord, that's key. Those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. You realize the key of this is not doing it in your own strength. It is not, oh, look, I can do more. That's not the key. It is waiting on the Lord. It is depending on the Lord. It is relying on God and God's strength alone to provide you. And when you do that, it's pretty cool. The byproduct is that you will end up gaining new strength. You will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired. They will walk and not become weary. It's a great reminder for us not to try to do things on our own strength, to turn to God and rely on Him. I fight that dependence. I fight that tendency, that dependent on myself tendency. I fight it. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I fight it. The reality is I so desperately want to be someone who is 100% dependent on God for everything. I want that to be the end of my life. If I can get there where, WWJD, what would Jesus do when I really live my life to everything just relying on Him? Boy, I think that will be a pretty awesome way to kind of go through life. That's my desire. That's what I would like to see. Well, I got two more quick names of God. These are kind of similar. They both appear in your Bible as Lord. Okay? One of them is capital L, lowercase o, R, D. And then there's another one which we'll talk about in a minute that you'll see all caps. It is L-O-R-D, capital, boom. Okay? There's a difference in those. We'll start here in Exodus 4:1. And then over in 10 and 13. It says, Then Moses said, What if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? For they may say, The Lord has not appeared to you. Moses, he is coming to God, God has come to Moses and said, Hey, I want you to be my mouthpiece. I want you to go and rescue my people from bondage, from slavery in Egypt. And Moses is kind of now giving up a couple of excuses. And now what happens in this in-between time, God kind of gives Moses a taste of some of his power. And then Moses, he replies. And it starts off in verse 10. Then Moses said to the Lord, "Please, Lord," different name, "please, Lord, I have never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to your servant. For I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." The Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes him mute or deaf, or sees him blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now then go, and I, even I, will be your mouth, and teach you what you are to say." But he said, "Please, Lord, now send the message by whomever you will." Now, in English, we kind of lose this kind of play on words that's happening here. It's a similar play on words that we see in the New Testament, where Paul or Peter is talking with Jesus, and he's saying, "Do you love me?" Okay? And we have different words for love used in the Greek. We have the same thing playing here. There's different words in Hebrew for Lord happening. Okay? And you think about this. This Lord, capital L, lowercase O-R-D. Here it comes. There it is. It's right there. Adonai. It means Lord, and it indicates this master to servant relationship. That there's this master, someone that is sovereign, someone that is over you, that is Lord of all. And then this subservient person that is underneath them, way not just lower in rank, but lower in position, lower in prestige. And here's what I found in life, is we try so often to take God from this place that he belongs, we try to bring him down into terms that we can understand, so that we can try to wrap our head around him, and in so doing, we can even get offended. Okay? Because this idea of having someone over us, in the American way, we don't like that. We don't really like, a lot of times, having bosses. We don't like to be servants to someone else because we're independent. We're free. We shouldn't be that. But it really depends on who that Lord is, who that master is. When you stop and think about it, the idea of being someone, go underneath someone, it goes against our natural person. But this master-servant relationship that we have with God, it is far greater than what we deserve to really begin with. We don't deserve to even be a servant of this master. But it's not a demeaning relationship. When we try to bring God down to our level, we lose this. God, he had created everything. And without God, nothing would ever exist. Only God is the rightful ruler of all of creation, of all of life. All that we ever added to this, all that we ever did, was make a mess of God's perfect creation. That's what we added to it. And then you get in Romans, it talks about this. Popular passage, we've used it a lot. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Christ is the one who fixes our problem. He is the one who comes. And he is the one who takes this issue that we've got and he gives us the remedy. It's a blessing. Honestly, it is truly a blessing to be a servant to this type of a master. Someone who is all-loving. Someone who has our best interest always on the forefront of his mind. Someone who is all-powerful, able to do anything and everything at a twinkling of an eye. Someone who is all-present. So many of us, we crave to have these type of vacations where we can just kind of maybe escape the busyness of life. Do you realize that God is the one who makes the things as simple as he possibly can? He is the one, if we truly just rest in him, we can have that vacation. But we're so busy about things, trying to do it on our own, that we sometimes miss it. Matthew 11, I'm bombarding with scripture. Matthew 11, 28 and 29. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. How is that accomplished? It's when we absolutely submit and surrender to the Master. And we really are willing to be that servant to Him. I'm working on Luke with this, but this whole idea of trust and obey. For there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. I'm working on him with that he can trust Daddy, that Daddy has his best interest at heart, and that you got to obey. And in the same way as I'm teaching him this, I'm reminded I need to trust and obey and stop relying on me and rely on God. The last name. It's my favorite of all names. It is Yahweh. That's how it's pronounced. It is L-O-R-D, all capitalized. It's the Hebrew word Yahweh. It is actually a name that the Hebrew people would have never actually uttered. It would have never been something they would have audibly said. So that's an interesting little concept because the Jewish people held this name for God in such a place of reverence that they wouldn't even speak it. Now, to the best of our knowledge, we pronounce it Yahweh. And what it means is I am, or I am that I am. And it is the eternal, self-existent one. That's what it means. In the book, when you think about this, the book of John, Jesus, really interesting connection with this. Jesus, he makes 7 I am statements. And these 7 I ams, I am the bread of life, I am the door, I am the way, blah, blah, blah. You get 7 of them. Book of John. You have them in there. And all of these things, Jesus, he is revealing this underlying truth that people of his day would have picked up on. When he is saying, I am, they would have been able to connect it, Greek to Hebrew. They are connecting exactly what he is saying, that he is one with God. That there is a connection, that there is a bridge. That Jesus was revealing to the people of his day and to us as we study his word today, that he is God. That's what he's claiming through these 7 I am statements. But as you kind of see today, we just scratched the surface. The names of God, they are revealing about some of the attributes, about some of the characteristics of who God is. There's a lot more that the Bible brings up, but this is just kind of a scratching of the surface. And it's important for us not to miss it. It's super significant, as I said, because it connects Jesus to Yahweh. You got this connection that I am, that Yahweh in the Old Testament. It is that connection that we see through these 7 I am statements. You see that in the New Testament. So what? I think the ultimate thing that I want you to get from today is that God has revealed himself to us. 3 specific ways: creation, through the Bible, and through his Son. We can get glimpses of who God is. We don't ever get the big picture. We don't see all of who God is. We'll never know all of the details. But it should whet our appetite to know the God who created us, to know the God who is intimately interested in the things that you go through. He has revealed himself enough that he draws us to him so that we can get this glimpse, so that we can go, oh, okay, there's a better way. We can look to that. As we kind of go through this, all of these attributes of God are, as they are just true statements about God. God is holy. That's what we're going to look at next week. We're going to look that God is blemishless, that he is perfectly pure, without any kind of a stain. He abstains entirely, completely set apart from sin. But we're going to see these various attributes. And the cool thing, the way I process it, is like a diamond. When you think about a diamond, you look at it and it's like, oh, that's a diamond. I've seen one of those before. But as you look intimately at the diamond, there's all of these various facets that the diamond has, all these various faces. It's all the diamond. Okay, it's a very poor illustration, but each attribute is like one of these faces of the diamond. They all interconnect to make that diamond. They're never separated from one another, but they all are the diamond. And that's kind of the idea of these attributes, that these are true things about God, what he has revealed to us about himself. And they all interconnect. I want to leave you with this. When it talks about that God is holy, it connects into the idea that God, He is unchangingly holy. That He doesn't ever change His holiness. That He is eternally holy. That He is forever going to be holy. That He is infinitely holy. And you kind of see that they connect this way. In the same way with His faithfulness. God is personally faithful. God is incomprehensibly faithful. When it comes to His justice, all justice is done through God being loving. It is tempered with God's grace and His mercy. And the list goes on, but you see these kind of connections where they kind of even overlap because God is God. And again, we're never going to fully understand Him. But I got to tell you, I'm thankful that I don't fully understand Him. Because that would be a really lame God. Wow. I hope this wasn't as confusing as it kind of came off in my head. But I want you to know God. I want you to love the God of the Bible. That's my desire for you. I want this to whet your appetite. I challenge you over these next few months to dig into who God is. Go deeper than what we're going to scratch the surface on. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you for what you've revealed yourself as. Lord, I thank you that we can get a glimpse of you. Lord, I know, to me, that's not enough. Lord, I want to know more. Lord, I want to just realize as much as I can, as much as my brain can comprehend, I want to know you better. Lord, especially as I've realized why and who you are, Lord. The scratching of the surface has just got me excited about you, Lord. I thank you for your revelation of that. Lord, I thank you that you open our eyes to these things, Lord, that it's you that draws us to yourself. God, I pray, Lord, that you just help connect these dots, Lord. I pray that you would unscramble some of this and help us to see that there is merit to the names that you have, that you are called throughout Scripture. Lord, that there is a connection, Lord, and that is so awesome to dig into. Lord, let us not take this stuff for granted. And let us learn to love you and know you better. And that's our desire. We come before you humbly today, and we ask you to do with this exceedingly abundantly above anything we could ever ask. We pray this in your name.